I am Marlene Peralta. When one thinks about designers, the first thing that comes to mind is trendy clothes, dresses, accessories, and even shoes. But what about those who work around science? In the spacesuit technology, for example. I spoke with Ted Southern, who is a New York City artist and who recently won second place at NASA's Astronaut Glove Challenge. How did you go about designing a glove that actually outperforms NASA's current technology?
Well, it was a collaborative process. I work with a Russian man named Nikolai Moiseev, who worked for the Russian Space Agency for a long time. So I'm lucky to have a very talented partner when you're in space and no atmosphere or in planets with microatmosphere. You end up having the pressure differential, and so the suits become quite stiff. And so part of our design is dealing with that stiffness, but there are thermal issues, there are micrometeoroid issues, and then there's all kinds of techno issues as far as regulating temperature.
To deal with the lack of flexibility in space, Ted says hands become key to achieve mobility.
If you think about astronauts in the International Space Station, they're in almost no gravity, and so they actually walk with their hands. Their mobility in their lower torso, their legs, and their boots are actually constricted so that they can remain more stable on platforms like robotic arms. But their hands become very important because it's not only how they manipulate whatever they're doing out there, disconnecting ammonia lines or dealing with solar arrays, but then they also actually walk with them. So their hand usage is very important.
Ted and Nick collaborated on the astronaut glove for almost a year, although they were thousands of miles apart.
He lives in Moscow. The glove competition in November was actually my second competition. There was a first one in 2007 that I participated in as part of my thesis for my MFA. And Nikolai was my competitor in 2007. So we actually met on the drive back to New York City. I gave him a ride back from the competition, and we became good friends, and he asked me to collaborate with him for this year's competition.
And it all finally came together when they both unveiled a full spacesuit they call Frontier Prime at I-Beam Studios, where Ted is doing his residency program.
The first part that's so special is that it was built by two people. Normally a spacesuit takes a team of hundreds, and I think the current budget for NASA for the new Constellation suit is $750 million. We built this for under $10,000. Our goal at this point is to make something that is a cost-effective space tourist pressure suit. Of course, safety is a prime concern, and that's something that we'll be dealing with going forward with NASA protocol.
But how did this Brooklyn artist make a connection between arts and science?
It was maybe subconscious direction that I headed in. It seemed like every piece I was doing, even before the gloves, people would have that question, is this art or is this science? And it wasn't something then or now that I'm sort of interested in defining. I don't think that it needs that particular definition. You know, it's especially gratifying as an artist to go to this NASA competition and sort of compete with real scientists. And so it's comfortable for me to have a foot in both worlds.
Aside from NASA, Ted's artistic versatility have reached the big screen, Broadway, and even Saks Fifth Avenue.
I just worked on the Addams Family with Basil Twist, who's a famous puppeteer.
Ted has a master's degree in sculpture, chosen because of his obsession with the human body, an obsession that is definitely reflected in every single one of his creations.
I do work with the hands in particular. I've been a little obsessive about how much I make for hands. And they're a particular interest to me, partly because I've injured my hands a couple times, partly because I'm an instrumentalist and your hands end up being a large part of how you play music. But it's also more fundamentally sort of how we interact with the world, how we change the world is through our hands.
What started at the NASA Glove competition has turned into a long-term partnership between Ted and Nick. They now own a company together called Final Frontier Design. Their mission is to provide the most up-to-date spacesuit garments. For Science and You, I am Marlene Peralta.
Watson can process 1 million books per second.